So good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of ESF Alumni Spotlight. Tonight, we're very privileged to have some of our women in STEM alumni with us, celebrating Women's History Month. So I wanted to try and go through a couple of housekeeping issues before we get started. I wanted to let you know that this is being recorded. It is also being live streamed on our YouTube channel. And there's a couple of the ways that you can ask questions. You can either email us at alumni@esf.edu. And then we will get to those questions at the end of the program. Or if you are logged into your YouTube channel or on Gmail, you can post questions there and then we'll bring those in as well. Oh, okay. So welcome all of our alumni here today. So I'm going to introduce them to you one at a time. So first, I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Bella. Elizabeth, thank you for joining us today. Elizabeth is an EFB and FRM graduate. So EFB is Environmental Forest Biology and FRM is Forest Resources Management. So both of those programs have had name changes. So it is now EB, Environmental Biology, and SRM, Sustainable Resources Management. And Elizabeth is a Environmental Planning and Compliance Team Lead at National Park Service in Alaska. So welcome, Elizabeth.
Hi, thank you.
So next I will bring on Taylor Brown. Taylor, thank you for being here. Taylor is an ERE graduate or Environmental Resources Engineering. She is currently working as a civil engineer at JM Davidson Engineering. So Taylor, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and now we have Rosie Burek, Rosie is an environmental science major, and she is currently working as Natural Resources Manager at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So, Rosie, thank you for being here.
Thanks.
And then last but not least, I would like to welcome Christine Kane. So Christine, thank you for being here. Christine is a Forest Resources Management, or again, SRM now, Sustainable Resources Management major. And she is also CEO of Audubon International. So I wanted to welcome you all today. And thank you for being here. I'm just going to go through a couple of questions, but I'd like to first start this off by having you introduce yourself, kind of tell us a little bit about your degree, where you're working now, and what that job actually entails. I know some of you have some titles that we don't really know what that means. And we do have, I would like to welcome a lot of our prospective students tonight and our alumni and parents and current students. So I want to make sure that we get all of your questions answered. So again, if you have any questions, pop them in the chat or email us. So I'm going to start with Elizabeth. So I will hand it over to you.
Great. Hi, welcome everybody. And thanks, Debbie, for the introduction and for asking me to be part of this panel. So I currently work for the National Park Service in the Alaska Regional Office. I'm the Environmental Planning and Compliance Team Lead for the region. So this job's great because I get to work with all of the 16 different national park units in the Alaska region, which is the entirety of Alaska. There's several regions with the National Park Service. So the structure of the agency I work for is the regional office. There's several of them. We get to look at the big picture. I get to look at all things NEPA planning. That's the compliance side. I get to work with a lot of different people with all kinds of different opportunities, projects. So anything that goes on in this region, if you are proposing as a park to put in a new trail, or you are part of a review that's for, say, a large scale gold mine that might go in or be put in next to a National Park Service area or land, then I would assist along with my team in getting through that process. So my background, I started at ESF in 1992. I was one of the first groups that was a full 4-year program, as the college at the time was transitioning from a 2-year to a 4-year set of educational opportunities. So that was pretty neat. And I was there through 1996. I graduated in 1996. And as Debbie mentioned, I was a dual major, which I shorthand as biology and forestry. So that's where I came from. That's what I'm doing now. It's been a long journey to get from upstate New York, where I grew up, all the way up here to Alaska, but a good one. So I'll get to talk with you more. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And that's funny because we just had somebody that graduated from us when we were just finishing the 2-year program. So at one point we were only upper division. I think it was for about 12 years that that last class came in. Oh, Christine apparently was during that time.
Okay.
So we are now fully 4-year school. We do bachelor's, master's, and PhDs. So, all right, Christine, I might as well just bring you on and let you go next then. If you want to tell us a little bit about where you work and what you're doing and how you got there.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here. So I graduated with the class of 82, and when the degree was called forestry. So it haven't had a number of name changes since then. I've actually stopped trying to keep up with them on my resume and such. So I'm currently the Chief Executive Officer at Audubon International, which is a nonprofit organization focused on creating sustainable environments where people live, work, and play. So as CEO, I am responsible for the overall management of the entire organization. So that includes everything from strategic planning and program development and budget management to overseeing our 6 different environmental certifications, staffing, and communications. I like to sum it up by saying that we work where the natural and the built environments come together, because that is where people spend most of our time. And we have created a niche to work with businesses that own or manage property, since that was kind of a piece of the sustainability discussion that was overlooked for a very long period of time. And that the property managers, owners, et cetera, in that niche were ready, willing, and able to become part of the solution. And many of them were already doing sustainable management practices and just need the ability to more fully participate. So along with our certifications, we provide education and technical assistance. And just to be clear with everyone, because I get this question all the time, we are not associated with National Audubon.
I was going to ask you to clarify that. So thank you for doing it. All right, we're going to move over to Taylor Brown. So Taylor, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey, your path, and what you're doing now?
Hi, everyone. I graduated from ESF in 2017. While I was at ESF, I was an ERE major. I was also involved with Engineers Without Borders, New York Water Environment Association, Eco-Reps, and I was an orientation leader. While I was at ESF, I networked a lot with some people who were doing stormwater environmental engineering work, and that's how I ended up coming back to Buffalo. I'm originally from Buffalo, and I came back to Buffalo to work for a consulting firm. And then after that, I've worked for the city of Buffalo, for the Buffalo Sewer Authority, and the Department of Public Works. And then 6 months ago, I decided to give consulting a try again. So now I'm with J.M. Davidson Engineering, which is a small women-owned consulting firm here in Western New York. We do a little bit of everything because some prospective students might not know this, but for public jobs, you need a percentage of work done by women and minority businesses. And so we're often brought on as a sub-consultant for big projects to meet that women-owned business percentage. But our firm has a hand in like the Bill Stadium. We were doing the sanitary sewer for that. All different projects across Western New York. And some days I'm in the office doing stuff on AutoCAD. Sometimes I'm out in the field getting measurements. Sometimes I'm presenting to community groups to let them know about different projects that we have going on. Every day is a little different, just to sum it up. But yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks, Taylor. I like that your position allows you to be in the field and in the office. So I think a lot of the jobs that our alumni get from this are kind of a combination of those, that there's a mixture of that. So now I'm going to go to Rosie, and I want to hear from you about kind of what your journey was and from graduation all the way up through where you are now.
All right. So I actually came to ESF as a transfer student in 2003 and graduated in 2006 with an environmental science degree. And my background was actually, I had two concentrations. One was watershed sciences, and the other was environmental policy and law. And I came to work for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, not as an engineer, but started out as a park ranger at one of our projects in Virginia. And,
Rosie,
yeah.
sorry, I'm going to jump in. I don't know if it's just me, but at your microphone, you're very garbled. I didn't know if you could adjust it at all.
Let me see. Is that a little better?
No. I don't know. It's very staticky. Is that happening? Does everybody else hear that too? Yeah.
Okay. I don't know.
Okay. Well,
Got any better?
keep going. I can still understand you. It's just garbled, a little bit
Okay.
staticky.
I apologize for that. So I now work for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I went from being a park ranger up to our district level as well, and now I'm at our headquarters level, and I basically do a lot of budget. I'm one of the few people that actually like spreadsheets, and so it was an interesting way to come up in the organization. I also didn't mind moving around, and so that is one way to move up in federal service. If you're willing to move around, you can definitely move up quicker. So I'm one of 6 senior policy advisors in our natural resource management branch. We manage 12 million acres across the country in 43 states, basically lakes and river projects for recreation and environmental stewardship. And I am the environmental stewardship business line manager. So I handle all of our budget for environmental stewardship at those lake projects, which is usually around $130 to $140 million annually. And I also get to do all of our trainings for our park rangers that deal with interpretation. So, those programs that they do for the public, we actually help to teach them how to do that, which is my passion. I love that. So that's me.
All right, thank you. I didn't know you did that part about the teaching the interpretation to the park rangers. So that's very interesting. So I guess I'm going to go through the line, and we're going to start with Taylor this time. So I want to know, what do you love best about your job? Like, this is what I go in for every day.
I love seeing projects come off the paper and into real life. And also, I didn't necessarily see myself coming back to Buffalo after I graduated. I did a lot of work with Engineers Without Borders, so I thought I would be somewhere international. But I'm so glad I came back to Buffalo as an adult for my career, because being able to do these projects in communities that I grew up in different places I grew up, is really the driver for me. Like some days in the office, you're doing really detailed calculations, but then when you actually get to see the project come to life and constructed, you're like, look, there's like a physical, tangible thing that I contributed to. So those days where I actually get to go out in the field and see the thing that I designed makes me want to come to work.
Gives you a nice sense of accomplishment. So I'm going to go to Christine next. And I know you didn't start out as a CEO. So can you also talk a little bit about your journey to where you are now, and then kind of what you really love about what you're doing now?
Sure. I have spent the bulk of my career in the nonprofit sector, and I found that to be very fulfilling. It provides a lot of flexibility, and that sector provides a lot of opportunities for women to move up into management. So that's sort of in keeping with what we're talking about today. I spent a lot of years on many different types of projects, everything from hazardous waste site identification to developing best management practices for non-point source pollution to recreational trail development. and land conservation, and probably a lot of other things I'm not remembering off the top of my head. So, one of the really, really great things about my forestry degree from ESF is the substantial scientific foundation that it gave me, and which has let me understand how to learn about a lot of these other areas that I have worked in. And so now, as I said, I'm the CEO of this organization with members in 34 different countries. We have, all different types and sizes of businesses, municipalities, nonprofits that we work with. So the things I like most about my job are that I've been able to work in a field that I'm very passionate about. And so while no 2 days are ever the same, I do really appreciate at this level, right? You can go back and forth from a short-term need, or there's always some crisis that comes up, but you have to balance that with long-term vision and goals. Because, and I often, when I do presentations about working in the environmental field, I say that I find that is particularly important, because we are working in a field that things can change. Well, they're changing a lot more quickly than they used to, but there are life cycles involved. There are, sometimes eons involved. And so you have got to keep your eye on the long-term goals and make sure you're taking those steps along the way to build that foundation so that you are ready and you can take advantage of different opportunities that come up. Because if you just try to wait until you need to implement a program or make a change or, conserve land, if you haven't planned ahead for it, you're not going to be able to do it.
Great. Thank you very much. Elizabeth, I'm going to go to you next. And I know we talked about this a little bit earlier, that you moved from federal jobs into the public workspace and then back to federal job. So can you also talk a little bit about that, and then talk about what you really love doing in your current job?
Sure. So I found I couldn't really figure out what I wanted to do. So I had my degree, and then I went to get a master's in forestry. And I'm so grateful I did all that. I started out working for the federal government, and I've gone back to that a number of times, including where I currently am. But I also dipped out to try my hand at consulting and apply what I was doing in different ways. And I'm also glad I did that. So I've had a really unusual path in that I've gone back to grad school 2 times. I went back and got a PhD. I quit my federal job and moved to New Zealand to do a postdoc. So what I used to do was research science. And what I found over the years, after trying it for a long time, is I'm a terrible research scientist. It just didn't really comport with how my brain works and what I like to do. So a couple things. For my job now, what's really important is I have to understand the scientists I work with day in and day out that feed into the impacts analysis that's vital for my job. I also have to understand the solicitors we work with in order to get policy into place and to make some large scale changes. The skills I worked in private industry, I worked for a company called HDR and also one called AECOM. I really grew into the things I was able to do to synthesize what I knew as a scientist, what I knew from on the ground field work, into how to effectively manage teams. And so it was a process. Every job I had, I also worked for NRCS in the Fish and Wildlife Service at different times in my career in the Forest Service, and also did the postdoc. So I had my steps into academia, I had my steps into private industry, but what I found my true love is I like the orderliness of federal service. I like being a civil servant. I like serving the public. I like helping people, and I hate sitting still. So as I became a mom 10 years ago-ish, he's 8, going on 9, and transitioned into a new job with AECOM, with the consulting firm, I found that the balance of life was also really important to me. And so the times in my life I was doing consulting work, it was absolutely excellent, like hard work, really focused, different types of things. Same thing with the academic experiences at UC Davis for my PhD, and then over New Zealand for the postdoc. The intensive work I was doing then really suited what I needed to do and how my brain was suited, and the ability to be outside a lot. But as I got older and more grew into this job, what I needed was a wellness and a life balance. So I feel very lucky that I've been able to transition between these different positions over time and toggle back and forth. I think it's given me invaluable perspective. And that feeds into what I love about my job. I love helping people. I like seeing policy change based on incremental understandings of how the natural world works. We know more every year, every project. I like getting things done. I'm a list checker. I also have a real fondness for Excel spreadsheets. And what I'm able to do now is I have this great team that I've assembled. I'm also a fixer. I'm a closer. I come in and fix up large projects. I have a real affinity for that. But I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't be doing what I do without the varied background I had. And that did start from ESF, is that solid science foundation I had, really discovering what I love. Being able to be outside for a majority of my career was really important. So that's me. Yeah, every day is a new adventure. Stuff comes out of left field, right field. A lot of my job, 50% of it is very reactive. So I still have that retention of like, I'm not sitting still. I'm always doing something. I'm not outside as much as I used to be. I get to visit parks every so often, like for about 4 years of travel or 4 weeks of travel per year. I'm able to go out to some remote sites. So that's pretty cool being in the Alaska region. So I might find myself in Skagway, or I might find myself up in the interior on a boat looking at a site. So it's all cool. It's all different. That's it.
You sound like you really love your job. Rosie, we're going to go to you, and we might have to play with your microphone again because I know on YouTube it's really very garbled and people can't understand. So I'm going to pull you up and see if we can chat a little bit before you start.
All right.
No.
Let's see if this, okay.
I don't know if there's anything we can do. I know people aren't going to be able to understand you, and I really want them to be able to hear what you have to say.
All right. Is this better?
Yes. Perfect. Yes. So, no, don't move now.
All right. So, what do I like best about my job? I like the variedness, really. I've had a wonderful career with the Corps of Engineers, being able to go from that bottom level all the way up to headquarters. And I've gotten to put my hands on basically every single major natural resource program in my time here, and which is great. So I've learned recreation, I've learned shoreline management, master planning. I love the policy aspects of it. And so I get to help write policy memos. I get to help write our regulations. But then I also do a ton with budget, which right now we're getting deep and heavy into our budget year for 2026 right now. So we actually do like 3 years. We're working 3 different years in a row because we're currently executing FY24. We are defending our FY25 budget when it comes out from the president. And then we're building our FY26 budget. So you've really got to know your numbers, which I find fun and interesting. And but then being able to work with those park rangers, we have about 2,500 park rangers across the country, and helping them learn how to interact with the public is such a blessing, to be able to do that and work with them and kind of see how the light clicks on when they're like, oh my gosh, that's what you mean. And that's how I can interact with them and get some great, interaction with the visiting public.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm going to bring Taylor back in. So it's probably going to go to all 4 of you again. Yep. So my next question I'm going to read because it's a long one. So according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, in 2021, women accounted for 52% of all workers employed in management, profession, and related occupations. However, according to the National Science Foundation, in 2021, women only comprised about 35% of the STEM workforce. So I'm going to ask you, can you talk a little bit about your experience as women working in STEM fields And do you see these statistics changing in your field? Do you see them getting better? Do you see more women coming on? So I'm going to go to Christine first, because hers may not actually be male dominated.
Oh, well, for many years it was male dominated, for sure. I would say in the last 10 years, I probably have seen more of a change. We do have opportunities where I am now for what we call our entry level positions. And when we advertise for one of those, we get probably 6-to-1 applications of women to men. So I think there might be a trend as to women coming more into these types of majors. And I think maybe there's something, maybe the trend is changing, maybe the demographics and the statistics are going to bear that out. But, we work with a lot of, hydrology and soil science and water conservation issues, water quality testing, as well as wildlife habitat. So, we are looking for people who can cover a lot of different bases. And so it's not, like Taylor's job, for instance.
Okay. Sorry, Christine, we were buffering for a moment there. Oh, okay. I lost you for a little bit.
Okay. Well, I don't know how much to repeat.
You were on soil scientists.
Okay. So we do, and that is kind of a misconception about our work in particularly the area of certifications, because there's a lot of self-certifying happening out there, and a lot of different, every day I see different entities that have cropped up that do certifications. And so we really feel it's important to have a scientific foundation, a science basis for the work that we're doing. And so we are looking for people who can either learn, are open to learning, so if you are coming out of more of the ERE background, but you don't know too much about soil science, are you open to learning more about that? So I think one of the part of the question was how to deal with that. Is that what you were asking, Debbie, or is that a different question that you showed?
That's going to be the next one. Oh. We're going to talk about that. But I mean, have you had any experiences
dealing with being in a male-dominated environment? Yeah. So, well, I mean, I'm in a different place in my career, obviously now, but I think it's very important to recognize there is something called imposter syndrome. And if you don't know what that means, I would highly suggest that you do a little research on it so that you can be prepared or recognize perhaps when it's happening to you. And I think, forewarned is prepared. So actually when I was at ESF, it was tremendously male dominated. There were not many women, particularly in the forestry program at that time. So it did help me become comfortable with the situations where I would be the only woman in the room and the only woman on the team. And you have to just develop the confidence in yourself. You're never going to know everything. So you have to have confidence in your knowledge, but the confidence in yourself, which we're going to talk about a little bit coming up, to recognize that you deserve to be in the room or on the team. You wouldn't have got hired if you didn't have the qualifications to be there. So you have to embrace that and really go with it, essentially.
I love that advice. Very nice advice. I think everybody can take that, whether you're male or female.
Exactly.
Everybody knows you're there for a reason. You've qualified. You have the education behind you. Just be confident in that. So, and I would also like to say, I'm not quite sure of the statistics, but at one point we were 51% female, 49% male at ESF. So it is it always
Not what I
usually
was
right around that 50-50 range now. So it's great to see so many women going into these fields. So you guys were the leaders. We're bringing the rest of them behind you. So I'm going to ask Rosie to speak on this question too. So kind of talking about your experience as a female in kind of male-dominated areas, and have you seen it changing over the years since you've been in the field?
So starting out, there was definitely the perception that there were more males in our field of park rangering, natural resource management for me. But when it came right down to it, at least for my agency, we were pretty 50-50. And so I felt that I was very lucky coming into the Corps of Engineers, where it was already a pretty even split within my program. Of course, as you move up into management, it's a little bit less, but overall, we still have a good, 50, 40, 55, 45 split. So it's not as bad as some other areas, I guess. And I think part of that is also because I'm not in the engineering section at my agency, where it is definitely more male dominated. So just feeling lucky that I have some great female mentors coming up.
Great, thank you. So since you mentioned engineering, we're going to bring Taylor back in. She keeps falling off of my thing, so we're going to bring her back in. We're going to go to all of us again. There we go. And now we'll just go to Taylor. So if you want to speak to that, especially from being in the engineering area.
Yeah, sorry, my connection keeps coming in and out, so I apologize for jumping
That's okay.
in and out. Yeah, I have worked as the only engineer in like my team that was female, and then I changed to a role where all the engineers in my department were female. I mean, when I graduated from ESF, I think our ERE class was the first to be majority women. And I remember freshman year, a lot more men had started out in the program. But ended up
Okay, I think we lost Taylor again. Taylor, I'm going to come in. You're frozen on my end, so I'm going to go to Elizabeth, and I'm going to mute Taylor just in case. So Elizabeth, do you want to take this question for me?
Sure. Yeah. So I had so my experience at ESF was probably more similar to Christine's, where there was just Annie and I, the only two women in the forestry school that year, and we went to the ranger school that summer and had our own room in the back, which we were annoyed about because we didn't have the view of the river. But anyway, it got really hot and sunny, and we were grateful for that back room. Anyway, that's part of the story. I definitely had trouble speaking up, imposter syndrome, very quiet. I have had some brutal experiences. I won't relate them here, just being or seen them or dealt with them in field crews about being the only woman. What I found great joy in some very excellent, hardworking groups of people that are all women. So the group I work with now happens to be 7 women. I manage all 6 of them. And I don't know if that's an artifact of like planners, if there's a gender bias in that. But I found, as I said earlier, I was not the academic, the research science wasn't a good fit for me. So I have transitioned more out of STEM into policy management. And that some of that is like just continuing on in my career. So I do see it changing. And I do see that there's a lot more conversations about imposter syndrome and having your seat at the table. And, I've kind of been through the whole spectrum of the Sheryl Sandberg, sit at the table. And I do sit at the table. Finding that voice, and I know we'll talk about that later or as the next question, but yeah, being able to find the confidence and being able to speak has been a big part of my journey from in this realm.
Thanks. All right, we're going to try and bring Taylor back on. Taylor, sorry we had to cut you off there. You froze again. We're going to try this again. So
where did it cut off?
I think pretty much right at the beginning. You froze very quickly.
Hopefully it doesn't happen again. So I have worked in different jobs where I've been the only female on the team, but then I've had jobs where it's all female engineers on my team. I've been lucky enough to have some really great like female engineering mentors. Um, and when I graduated from ERE, our class was majority women. I don't know if that was like the first class to be majority women from the ERE program, but I've had so many great mentors, and the times where I have been the only woman at the table, I have seen some men try to belittle my experience or my knowledge just because I'm a woman. But the best thing that I've found is to call it out as respectfully as you can, because we can't allow men to continue to dominate the workplace in that way, making it uncomfortable for women. So if I see, somebody disrespecting a woman just because they're a woman, I usually call it out because I don't want men to scare women out of the engineering workforce. There is a pretty high statistic of women leaving engineering for various reasons. And I would hate to see that just because the workforce, like the workplace, is intimidating. But having the support of like other women in the field definitely helps with that confidence of being able to stand in a room with all men and hold yourself to a high standard and be confident.
Right. Taylor, since your connection is working great, I'm going to stay on you. And
Okay.
do you have any advice for any women that are just entering the STEM fields, beginning their time in the workforce? And is there something that you'd wished you'd known when you first started?
I think you shouldn't put as much pressure on yourself when you get started to know everything. Nobody knows anything when they start. So I always just stayed curious and asked questions, and tried to listen as much as possible. And when I worked for the city of Buffalo, I would talk to every different type of position that was in the sewer authority, the different maintenance workers, the operators, because they have a lot of knowledge to share. And just staying curious and saying yes to things that you're not sure if you'll be able to do it. Because that's the only way you really learn is by doing it. ESF provides a good foundation of knowledge, but there's a lot of things that you're going to learn that are new once you're on the job. So just don't be afraid to try it, and maybe you'll fail, but then you can ask for help along the way and learn as you go.
Great advice. Thank you for that. All right, I'm going to go to Rosie next. Any advice that you can give our women entering the STEM field?
Sure. So don't be afraid to go for those positions. First off, you have the educational background with ESF. You are ready to go. Don't be afraid to continue your learning. Definitely. That is one thing that I did as, even while I was in my career, I continued my learning. I wanted to know as much as possible. So whether it was partnering with someone else in my job to learn what their programs were and just expand my knowledge of what we did, or going out to like a weekend program where, I learned grant writing or something like that. You never know what will lead you to your next position. And so if it's interesting to you, just go ahead and do it. Definitely. Don't be afraid to do that. And then as someone who is new coming to the job force, I would definitely say, make sure, when you're looking at salaries and things, also take into account that the benefits, if there's a 401k, things like that. So it's not all just what you're taking home every day. It's that extra stuff as well. That work-life balance is big, and you'll understand that moving forward.
Thank you, Rosie. Christine, sorry. How
That's
about you? Any
Uh,
advice for our
Yeah,
new?
well, I would echo a lot of the points that have been made. One thing I think is start building your network early. And that includes everything from, if you're going to join professional associations, if there are other, maybe even a women's philanthropic group, something like that, where you can begin to build that network. And hopefully, you're kind of all going to come up together. So you will have people, colleagues to rely upon. Get yourself a mentor or mentors as soon as you can. And so I have done a lot of mentoring, and people are often like, well, how do I ask somebody to be my mentor? And oftentimes you don't really even have to ask. You don't have to say, will you be my mentor? You're just like another colleague. You're bouncing ideas off it. You're looking for some input. Can I send this to you? And I'd love to get your input. And that's going to begin that process so that it may happen more naturally. And while I'm on the subject of mentors, I will also put a plug in for as you move up in your career, mentor others, help others move up and become more skilled and confident in their careers also. But I think one thing that we don't often think about is making a career plan. And it may not be it doesn't have to be super detailed or whatever makes sense for you. But while and I think Elizabeth alluded to this, kind of while you're trying to figure out what it is that you want to do, having a plan can help you be more strategic about the moves that you make in your career. Because sometimes a lateral move can be just as important. All moves are not vertical. And if it gets you into an area that you are more passionate about, or that you have more interest in, or more skills in, and you just haven't been able to flex them yet, don't ignore lateral moves. And one other point I guess I would make is to work in an area or a subject that you can be passionate about, because there's always going to be general issues of your job. As I said, some kind of crisis you might have to deal with, budgets you have to defend, whatever that might be. But, if we're talking about some of the difficult situations that women in STEM are dealing with, then, let's make sure that we're dealing with them because we're working on topics that we want to work on.
Thank you for that advice. I really love the mentor portion of that as well. And I know for our alumni that are out there, for our students that are here, possible future students, our alumni serve as mentors too. So we always have students asking, can I speak with somebody that's in my field? And we're always very happy to put you in touch with somebody that can help you. And it also helps that they've come from the same type of schooling background that you've come from. So they can give you kind of a different perspective than just somebody else in the field, especially if you're looking for something really closely related to your degree. So, Elizabeth, I know we've had a lot of good advice, but I'm going to send it to you. It always is bad to be the last one. So, but do you have any words of advice?
Well, that was all brilliant advice, all of it. So this is one thing. Well, a couple things I'll add is, like, you can continuously take instruction, and I hear everything that's been said, and I'm like, yeah, find myself nodding. You can keep reinventing yourself. So here's some advice I'd gotten, and it's really served me well all throughout my careers. Be a hero, take risks. It's okay to dial it in at times. Sometimes you need to lean back, and sometimes you need to lean forward. And there's a lot of pressure, like build, grow, network. It's all important, but you can also focus on yourself as well, and also have fun. Your job should be fun. The networking you do, the mentoring, you should have a fun element. That's it.
Still great advice. Lots of good things there. So I know this is another area that I think a lot of questions on is salary issues. So women have been historically paid less for doing the same job in a lot of industries. So what would be any good advice you have for students seeking to find their worth, especially even just out of college, but you have a degree, you have a specialized degree, if you've done any extra research or clubs and activities, anything like that, or anything that tools that they could use to kind of figure out where a salary should be as they secure their first job and then as they move through. So I'm going to go with Taylor because she's my youngest grad.
Okay. So I have been very involved with professional organizations during college and then also after college, which have led to a lot of great opportunities that I've been able to put on my resume, and not just like put on my resume, but also just develop my personal skills. So I highly encourage students after graduation to get involved. Some of the ones that I'm involved with, New York Water Environment Association, specific to water, wastewater, and then also American Public Works Association, if you are going to get involved in public projects. Another thing to look for too is when you are applying for jobs, see if those jobs are supportive of you being in professional organizations and continuing education. Because I've had friends at different engineering firms or different public entities that were not able to attend conferences and trainings like I was. And those can be really valuable in, being able to market yourself. There's definitely, which I think is a great trend, is that more people are moving in and out of jobs in their career than they used to. And some people on the panel have demonstrated that they've been able to reinvent themselves a lot and take on a lot of different positions throughout their career. So it's always good to keep that in the back of your mind of like, okay, what skills would I like to develop and like, how can that help me in the future? I'll just shout out a couple great programs. There's the Unleashed Innovation Lab through the United Nations for young people to work on the Sustainable Development Goals, and they'll pay for you to meet with 1,000 other great young minds in the world in one location each year. So I was able to do that my first year out of school, and my company was supportive of it. I mean, a big part of that is because the United Nations paid for everyone's attendance to that, but there are those opportunities where your work doesn't necessarily have to pay for it, but they do have to be supportive of you, like taking time off. So as much as you are stressing about getting a job after graduation, you're also interviewing these companies to see if they're going to support your personal development. I think that's all the notes I had for that.
I like that. You're interviewing them too. I think there's certain things that everybody's looking for in a job, and make sure you are getting out of the job what you can, not just giving to it as well. So, Elizabeth, you kind of moved jobs in and out, so I'm going to go to you next for this question.
Sure. So. The emphasis on professional societies, really important. Networking. Make sure, the position you are interviewing them for will allow you to do that. I think that is incredibly important. It's how I've basically gone from job to job, is the networking, the connections I've made, deciding what I wanted to do, what my parameters were for what a job is and what a job should be and what I wanted to do, and the level of experience I had. So other advice I could give, or ideas, is you can speak up. You can ask if you're in a position or you've been in it a while, you can ask for an audit. You can be brazen, you can negotiate hard. There's no reason you can't. I don't know if this is still the case, but what I remember reading about was that, men will often ask for a really high salary. And so, they come to it a different way. Women, not as much. Same thing when you're asking for an annual raise or requesting one. Or another strategy is, I did a lot of government service where there's set pay scales. It feels a little more fair. You know exactly what you're getting. So if that's more of an appeal to you, that's a fine way to go. There's set pay scales, there's locality pay, et cetera. It does. I feel like it really does matter doing the research, what you should be paid, what are current jobs in your area. There's lots of tools you can look up and then negotiate. Make sure you're getting what you're worth, and make sure that you are doing what you want to do. And I love the idea of interviewing the employer that will be potentially employing you.
All right, I'm just going to go right to Christine. I'm not even going to jump on here. So any advice you can give our women coming up today, or anybody about negotiating salary and knowing your worth?
Yeah, so in addition to all the great advice that's been giving, I would say doing your research ahead of time, and that may require spending a little bit of money to buy some reports that can give you better data. For that is very, very important. So if you come into the interview knowing your worth, and I do love it. I mean, I've been hiring people for a long time. So when I can tell that someone is interviewing me, I love it. And it's very refreshing because it does not happen that often. If you have the opportunity to take some instruction in the art of negotiation, I would highly recommend that you do that. It's a little more difficult when it's your first job, but it's not impossible, right? And it should not be impossible for you to negotiate at any job. And almost everything is negotiable. And I think you have to have an idea of what is important to you. So in your first job, maybe your salary and your benefits are going to be the things that are the most important for you to negotiate hard on. Later on, maybe it's flexible work hours. Maybe it's more vacation. If you want to ask for a raise, but maybe you would really rather have more vacation. Everybody always thinks we want to have more money, but maybe you want to have more vacation. That is certainly something that you can bring up and negotiate on, as was already mentioned. I think someone started to allude to it, and there are some studies that show, for instance, that women tend to only apply for jobs when we think we meet 100% of the qualifications as listed in the job description or the job posting, and that men often apply for those same jobs when they meet 50 or 60%. So don't be so hard on yourself that you think you cannot apply for a job because you don't meet 100% of the qualifications as listed. Very, very few people do. So don't cut yourself out of potential opportunities. And I think it is also helpful if you can look at every interview as a learning opportunity. It helps tamp down nervousness, for instance, because you may get halfway through an interview and say to yourself, this job is not for me. But you've learned a lot from being in that interview. And that is a great opportunity for you also. So do take the chance to apply for something, even if you don't think you meet all of the qualifications. Another thing that is very important is to speak proactively about your work. Sometimes as women, we get into helper mode. And so we do not properly frame things on our resumes or when we're in an interview presenting what we're done. We may say that we helped with something. We participated in something, when we should be saying that we led the team, that we secured the deal, secured the contract, that we brought in X amount of whatever it is, new members, income, fundraising. In the nonprofit world, you're always doing fundraising for the projects that you want to do at all levels. Everybody has to help. So don't be afraid to toot your own horn and to show me as the potential employer what you can bring to the organization. I want to see your value to my organization. You really want to put me in the position where I say, oh my God, I have to hire this person. And so, humbleness is not necessarily your ally when you are in a negotiation, particularly over pay scales and other items, I guess I would say.
A lot of great advice there. Very inspirational too. I'm going to ask you, Rosie, with this last question. What can what can we do when we're looking for a little bit more out of a position, or we're looking to try and value our worth?
So I think one thing, everything everyone has mentioned is great. And so for me, it's a little bit harder to talk about negotiation because of being in the federal sector. I have my pay scale, but there are other things you can negotiate as well. Moving expenses, things like that, leave to get to where you're going if you're moving, things like that. But one thing I would also say, kind of along with what Christine was talking about, is, you're in that interview and you're interviewing them, they're interviewing you. If you don't get the job, don't be afraid to go back and talk to them about what you could do better. And that's something, we really do in the federal sector, at least, of, feel free to come back and talk to us. And you never know, because that could get that network started. Maybe they have a different job that might be more beneficial to you, or they're going to have something coming up in a couple months. And so keeping that line of contact open is a good way to get your foot in the door if this is like really the company that you want to work for. And maybe they can help you, along in different ways as well.
Thanks. Great advice. Yeah, using your interview as a learning experience if you don't get the job. I think that's a great advice, trying to find out what could I have done better, or what skills am I missing if that's really the field that you want to go into. So I'm going to wrap this up. We're going to put two questions into one. So one, how did ESF prepare you for what you're doing today? And two, what would you tell a prospective student that's looking at ESF? Why should they come here for their degree? Rosie, we're going to start with you.
So being a transfer student, I guess maybe it was a little bit different. I came to ESF specifically for my program. It may have been a newer program when I came in for environmental science, but I loved how I could kind of customize what I wanted to learn. There is a great history with the college itself. There's so many different things that you can look at and participate in. You have SU right there. So there's so much to do, to see, to learn. It's just amazing. And so I had a wonderful experience there. My husband also went to ESF. He went to Ranger School as well. And so just being able to have that diversified experience, learning that science behind, what I could do policy wise was just amazing. So for prospective students, it's like, really, it may be far away. It might not be the best weather at times, but you will gain so much as long as you are like up to participating in the college activities and just everything that they have to offer.
Great. Thank you, Rosie. Elizabeth, how about you? What, how did ESF prepare you for where you are today? What did you learn from here that you're still using, you're carrying through? And then what advice would you give to new students?
Sure. So my time at ESF, I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I didn't love the weather all the time, as mentioned. But I grew up in upstate New York, Jamestown, New York. So I knew what I was getting into, and it was an affordable option for us. The science background I got, forestry biology, and all of the related opportunities. I got to take classes over at SU. There were all kinds of side curricula. Just the learning environment and the atmosphere of Syracuse is pretty remarkable, especially looking back with the perspective of time, as I was set up so well to go on and do all the adventures and the different jobs I did. And I'm so grateful for that. So I would highly recommend it. It's a focused place. So it appeals to students that really want a focused experience, but the expansiveness of having all of SU and all of the other amenities of that area, and just the academic community, the community opportunities. If it's anything like I remember it, I'm sure it's continued to grow. When I went there, it was a period of growth for the college, and I've just seen it grow and expand. It's just remarkable. So highly recommended. Definitely consider it.
Great, thank you. And I do want to mention that SU ESF connection. It's kind of having your own small school at state tuition rate, but having access to Syracuse University to some of their courses, but also their activities and outside of the classroom participation. So I know this will be fun for you guys when I think there are 52 clubs and activities at ESF right now. So they have really, really been booming in the clubs and activities that they're doing. So if there's something that you like to do, you can probably find it at ESF. And if not, Syracuse University is right next door, and you're allowed to use those clubs and activities as well. So it's really a great combination between the two. So Christine, I'm going to shoot the question to you.
Okay, thanks. In the, what's important and what does ESF provide? I think the one thing that hasn't been mentioned is the ability to do applied science. And so that when you are, going to Pack Forest or Cranberry Lake for your summer programs between your sophomore and junior years, in the forestry, when I was in forestry, you spend a whole semester out at Tully. Might be a little different now, but you're immediately up into what it is that you want to do. You are learning and you are applying at the same time. And I think that is a huge difference over many other programs. Another thing that I have talked to people about, colleagues from other schools, is critical thinking and problem solving for sure. But early on, now, one of the reasons I chose the forestry program at Syracuse was, of course, back in '82, there were not as many types of majors available if you wanted to work in the environmental field. And forestry was one of the very, very few that was talking about sustainable resources. And to have that recognition from the beginning of my academic career and to be able to take that forward into my professional career, I have found to be, I really can't put a value on it. And the third thing I just wanted to mention is early on instilled in me the importance of communications. And so when you write those papers, when you do those presentations, when you're doing your research, it's because particularly now in today's world, everything moves so fast. There are so many different outlets for us to get the word out. But you just have to be able to communicate what it is you're doing, what is the importance, why is it important, and so it might be writing grants to support your work. It might be publishing in professional journals. It might be doing community presentations, as Taylor mentioned. But we were early on, it was instilled on us that we had to write well, we had to speak well, and we had to be able to, if we couldn't explain that what we were doing, then how were we going to fill in the blank, get the support to do it, get the money to do it, get the businesses together to do it. So I think that's all very, very valuable that I got from ESF. And if you're a prospective student and you are considering going to ESF, I would just say, oh my God, go. It was the best thing I ever did. I had lifelong friendships. I learned so much there. It's a very focused place. I have hired some ESF graduates, and they are just so much more mature and focused on what it is that they want to do and how they want to achieve things in their career, that they do definitely stand out from the crowd.
We love to hear that. We had to bring Taylor back in again. So Taylor, last one, what does ESF mean to you? How did it get you where you're going today? And what advice do you have for prospective students or students that are here right now?
I love ESF. I have such good memories from there. And like I said before, I have lifelong friends that I've made at ESF. But when I was applying for schools and particularly for engineering programs. ESF really stood out because the engineering program is so small and intimate. It was, I think, our class like 30 people, 30 to 40. And another school I was accepted into was University of Michigan, which has like a really well-known engineering program. And I was very stressed out about making that decision about where to go. And my mom suggested that I call some prospective companies that maybe I'd be interested in working for one day and ask them, do you value graduates of like one school over the other? And like, what do you think? And I actually talked to some very nice recruiters that told me, like, it depends what area of the country you're in. Like if you're in Michigan, we would hire you if you went to University of Michigan in Michigan offices, but we also hire people from ESF. And if I hadn't gone to ESF and I did go to that school, I would be in debt for the rest of my life. And there's a lot to be said about college debt really weighing you down in terms of what you're able to do as an adult, like buying a house and, being able to travel and having family and all of those things. So that's definitely something to keep in mind, is the affordability, but also just in general, the people you meet that are ESF alumni are just awesome people. Just the people on this call are so inspiring and so passionate about what they do, which I see as like a very distinct difference between ESF graduates and graduates of other colleges. And yeah, just all the stuff that you can get involved with, again, like the 52 clubs. And also I had friends that went to ESF, but then they were presidents and leaders of clubs at SU, just because we are such go-getter people that we're like, well, we're going to take over your clubs too and lead those. So like my roommate was the captain of the dance team at SU. The other was president of the outing club. So there's so many ways to get involved and find your community. That's it.
Thank you so much. So what I've heard is ESF is great. You should come here, and our alumni are awesome. So I think that's a grab. Actually, I do have one question for Taylor Brown. They asked if you ever joined the Society of Women Engineers, and would that be beneficial, like some of the organizations that you talked about? And I would like to go for all of you, if you have kind of organizations that you belong to for your position, where you would recommend people to join these organizations to get a little bit more of that networking that you talked about. So we'll have Taylor go first.
Yeah, Society of Women Engineers is great. I've networked with a few people that are involved with that. I think it's just finding, like one or two organizations that you can really get involved with to volunteer your time, make a name for yourself, network. But it kind of ends up, like being a lot of like the same engineers. The engineering community is pretty small. So I'll end up at the same events anyway, but SWE is a good one as well.
Okay, great. Thanks. Elizabeth, how about you? Do you have any organizations that you would recommend people to join?
Well, I was a member of Society of American Foresters for years, and I'm not anymore. And now I'm National Association of Environmental Professionals. And I just wanted to share, I keep this photo of myself in Illick Hall in my office. The office I've had. So yeah, those are the two that I was involved in. And I would probably recommend NEAP, maybe later career, but SAF might be still a good one.
Mm-hmm. That's still going strong. If you're going to be in forestry, that's the one to join. Rosie, how about you?
So I am a certified interpretive guide with the National Association for Interpretation. So that's basically the park rangers and things like that. So that's a great one. They have some great conferences with wonderful programs, if that's something that you might be interested in.
Great, thank you. And I know we have some student chapters of some of these organizations as well, so you can get involved while you're a student at ESF. So, Christine?
Yes, Society of American Foresters. Early on in my career, when I was, different subjects that I was working on, some Water Alliance groups, and, working in the nonprofit world, as I mentioned, I did a deep dive into philanthropy. So I joined the Association for Fundraising Professionals, and I got my certified fundraising executive credential, and I still do have that.
Great. Skills that you can keep taking with you. Well, now we're
Yep.
getting more questions. Have any of you gone to ESF after finishing an associate's degree at a community college? Christine, where did you start out then?
Well, as I think Elizabeth said, she came after it went back to full division. So when I attended, it was only an upper division school. And so there were arrangements with some various community colleges across the state. So I went to Columbia Green Community College in Hudson, New York for my first 2 years, and then came up to ESF for my junior and senior years. And I have to say, I think it was really great. Some of I think at the class that I came into was the last class that also took some 4-year people. So some of my friends were on campus for all 4 years. And I think that I had the ability to have, should I say, a more rounded education, because again, back then at ESF, there were no clubs, there were no sports. There was just the Woodsman's team. That was it. So I was able to, play college basketball and other sports and be in leadership positions in some clubs and things that I probably would not have been able to do, or were not available at the time on the ESF campus.
Right. Now, Rosie, did you say you transferred in?
I did. So I was in a 4-year college elsewhere and decided that they didn't really have the program that I wanted. And so came up to ESF after that. I actually did it backwards though, because I got an associate's degree after my bachelor's degree in paralegal studies. So I have a legal background as well.
Okay. And I will say that I know that our admissions office has agreements with a number of community colleges in the area. So if anybody is thinking about doing that, certainly talk to our admissions office about that.
Yeah. Can I just say how envious I am? I read the college publications now and I'm like, wow, where was this when I was there? So I think that that's the only thing that could make it, better than, I absolutely loved it when I was there. As I said, learned so much, met wonderful people. So now the addition of sports and clubs, can only make it better.
Great. Well, thank you. I think that's it. We're going to wrap it up. I don't see any more questions. So I wanted to thank all of you for coming on tonight, sharing your stories with us. It's always lovely to hear from our alumni and hear what they're doing. I know our students come in saying, I'm going to change the world. And you guys are doing it. So that's the best part. So thank you very much. We will be doing another one of these programs. I believe it's March 21st. We'll be doing and it's going to be a department update with the chair of the ERE department. So Lindy Quackenbush will be joining us, and we'll be learning a little bit more about that department and kind of what's going on in with some of her faculty as well. So looking forward to seeing you all again. Anybody that's on tonight, please join us again. And take care, everybody, and have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.